Genesis chapter 18, chapter 2 and verse 18. It says, "The Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." I used to think, one day it kind of occurred to me to ask God the question, when you made Adam, you made the man, why did you just make a male? Why is when you know the end from the beginning, and so why didn't you just make two at the same time, the man and the woman? But instead of that, he says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. He just had the male body there. And then he says, it's not good. I'll make a helper suitable for him. And so I asked, most of what we teach comes out of the questions that we've asked God that have occurred in our own hearts as we've been reading. And so I had asked God this question. I don't know how long, it was years later that he answered me and showed me this. And really what we're doing here is we're seeing that God is looking at man, but what actually is beginning to build the big picture. The big picture that we're all kind of, even in this stage of our evolution, if you like. I'm not talking about evolution in a Darwin sense. But, in this stage of our growth, if you like, as human beings. We're coming into this time, the time of Christ and the church. But the picture of it was given right back here in the garden, the very beginning, where God was showing what this is actually all about. I'm going to show you in human form and in picture form. And so when he's looking at Adam, who is, as we know, he was the first Adam, and Jesus came as the second Adam. But in a sense, if I can say this, in a sense, Jesus was really the first Adam. And this Adam that God is creating now is the picture of him. So we're seeing here that God is looking eternally at his son, and he's saying it is not good for my son Jesus to be alone. He's reflecting it here. He's showing us the picture of here in the garden when he's creating the human being, and he's putting it in human form. God said it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. And so this word helper, a lot of people have got kind of stuck on. And, as we talked before, as Stephen pointed out about the Augustinian understanding of the creation of man as being the male being the true image of God and the woman being the helper. But it's interesting that this word here, I will make a helper suitable for him, is not in any way a subservient kind of word that is used here. In fact, this word is used in the scriptures. The word helper in the original language is used many times in connection with God himself. God is my helper. It's the same word that is used. God is my helper. He is my very present help in time of trouble. The same root word, Ezer, E-Z-E-R in Hebrew, which is used here in Genesis when God said, I will make a helper suitable for him. It's the same helper, that same word that God uses for himself. So it shows that the suitable helper for Adam, the woman, will be a helper that will reflect help in the way that God helps. So I was asking this question, why didn't he make, the man and the woman at the same time? And so God began just unfolding this understanding that this is actually a picture, beginning the picture of Christ in the church. So he says, because I was saying to the Lord, years before in the year of 1980, I remember what year it was, and we were living over at Orama on Great Barrier Island, which was the place where, we'd done our Bible school. It's where we now run our INS schools. It's in a little valley, pretty little valley, just right on the ocean. At this particular time in 1980, James and I had done our Bible school, had been to the States, and we'd come back to Arama to come back to run all the counselling that was done there. I was supervised by a Christian psychiatrist who used to come over once every 2 weeks, and so I would have supervision from him. But I was overseeing all the counselling ministry there, and James was running the what we called the Seeker program, which was a program that we had there for anyone to come. And they could be, like, we had ministers, we had Queen's Counsel lawyers, we had drug addicts, alcoholics, we had the full spectrum of society. We had burnt out housewives, we had, I remember one woman who came who was a model, we had heroin addicts, we had this whole collection of humanity that we had living with us in this little valley. And, we had sole responsibility for it. It was one of it was actually where I learned that lunatics, the whole thing is actually real. Because sometimes, someone would go missing or they'd get psychotic or something, and they'd disappear, and those of you who know Arama, they could be in the ocean, they could be over the hills, they could be lost on a track somewhere. But I can remember one night James and I were out walking around the hills, and we were calling out this particular young woman's name. And I said to James, isn't it good that every time we have to look for someone like this, at least it's a full moon, so we can see. And then it dawned on me, this always happens on the full moon. So it was just quite fascinating just to see that. But God was very kind to us, because during the time we were, running this particular section of the community life, nobody died. So I'm very blessed about that. Because actually we had several occasions when people did attempt to take their life, and God saved them. So anyway, here we were really busy. This was in our era of really being Jesus to the world, because when I got saved, as part of my testimony, I really took to heart, Jesus has saved you, he's done so much for you, now you need to go and be Jesus to the world. Take him to the world, be Jesus to the world. And I, because I really loved him and he was so alive in me, it just made all the sense in the world to do that. It was what my heart wanted to do. The world needs to see and to know Jesus. So, we were really busy in this particular program we were running. And I remember this one day, I was sitting up in our lounge room, and I was just looking down over the community, and I was watching all the different ones that, that we were overseeing, and my heart kind of being wrenched with the preciousness of each person. As I was looking, there was this young woman called Stephanie, who was just walking down. She'd been with me, and she was just walking down our pathway down to the main building, and I noticed that she was walking like 3 paces on that side of the path, and then 2 paces on this side, and then 3 paces on its side, and then 2 paces back here. And, like everything, and I was thinking, oh, goodness me, I know what we're in for, kind of thing. But my heart was just torn, with compassion for her. And I, just looking around with other ones, I remember that night, anyway, it's another whole story. But she did go into the ocean, and she managed not to drown. But then another day, I can just remember sitting up there, and I just felt so empty, emotionally and every other way. I was just, and I can remember, because this is going back to 1980, so I was still quite young. But I can remember sitting there and thinking to myself, If some man came down the road right now, because it was kind of a road that, from the airport, it's a wiggly road. I can remember thinking, if someone came down now and there was kind of like a mutual attraction, that doesn't stop just because you get married. I don't know if any married people have noticed that. But, it can still happen. There can still be a spark. And it's what you do about the spark that matters, really. And so, but I was just thinking, I actually feel quite powerless. I feel so empty that I think I would jump at it, and that honest moment in my heart scared the wits out of me, I realized I am in a really vulnerable place. There was nothing like James and I, there was nothing wrong in our relationship in that sense. It was just, he was empty, I was empty, because we were pouring ourselves out into this life in this community. So, but that so freaked me out, that realization I would just probably jump at any attention that was given to me. So I thought the best thing I can do, is actually just cancel my afternoon's appointments. And so I took a rowing boat and I rowed around a couple of little bays, and I stopped at Barbecue Bay at that time. It was just a pretty little bay, and the grass came down to the sand and had no buildings or anything on it. And I just thought, and all I took with me, I took my Bible. And I just thought, because God was a long way away, my emotion attachment to James was a long way away. I just wasn't attached to anybody or anything emotionally except just these people that I had compassion and love for. And so I just lay on the ground on my stomach, I can remember, and I opened my Bible and I thought, I'm just going to read from the Song of Solomon, because I knew my heart was searching for romance, and what that kind of gives you, the life. Romance gives you life, doesn't it? That spark, it gives life. And so that's what I was kind of looking for. So I hadn't read about this kind of thing or anything, but I just thought, the Song of Solomon is the most romantic book. So I opened the Song of Solomon and I decided I would just read from the beloved perspective, and the lover being Jesus, I was taking, that I am his bride, we are the bride, he is the husband, the lover. So I was silent, I silently read, the lover part, and I spoke out the beloved part. And, I didn't get that far into it. I don't know, maybe chapter 2 or maybe 3 at the most. And all I can say is that Jesus was there as lover. The romance, the romantic, just the fullness of romance is all I could say. But it was such a full experience. It lasted for quite a long time. He spoke things to me that, he knew for me would be extremely romantic. He knows us all so individually. So he knew what would tick my boxes, as far as words that were spoken and things. And so I was just in this experience where I actually didn't see him, but I didn't need to. He was so present and his words were so clear. And after the experience finished and I was rowing back to the community, and the thought went through my mind as I was just contemplating, what had actually happened and how can I even try and explain this to somebody, because I didn't know this experience.